Welcome to this week's episode of the Business of Real Estate podcast with Lynn, Hoffman, and Eric Johnson. Today, we're talking about all the things you should be doing before you work with a buyer or seller. For example, have you ever done a deal where all of a sudden at the end you discover there's no money to pay me? Or perhaps you've shown a lot of houses and all of a sudden that person doesn't qualify to even look at a home. So this week we're talking about all the little things you can do to avoid any potential calamity when it comes to dealing with clients. This week on the Business of Real Estate podcast. Welcome back. So today, Lynn, we're talking about all those things to avoid. I mean, we've all heard stories. You and I both have talked to agents who've had issues, whether it was on the buy side or the sell side. Right. And to be honest, there really isn't. It's not a lot that you have to do to avoid these things, but it is doing a little bit of due diligence beforehand, isn't it?
Absolutely. It's about asking the uncomfortable questions that you really probably don't want the answer to, but it's better to find out sooner than later. And we're finding that a lot of times the agents are finding out later when it's title search or time to close. So we've got some things that you can do to not be in that part.
Yeah, and I think a lot of you, and I know I've talked to so many agents over the years, over 10 years, and they're afraid to lose the deal. I think some of you are afraid to lose a deal if you ask too many questions. And it's really, I mean, that's better than getting to the end and going, I did all this work and I get paid nothing, right?
Worse than that. There's a worse.
Oh yeah, no, you can get
sued.
Sued.
Nothing, you can get sued, you can lose all the referrals from those people. There's a whole bunch of things, repercussions from not asking the right questions.
For sure, right? You know, that something falls through, they badmouth you,
100%.
The reputation goes down for sure. I think probably the easiest one, let's get it out of the way, is the buyers.
Buyer side.
Right? Two things I would say is, one is the qualifications, but the other is lack of signing agreements. And especially when it comes to family and friends. I remember this one realtor, this was probably 10 years ago, telling me about how they took it was a cousin or it was a close family member, and said they must have showed him 100 houses. Like they had spent months looking for the right house. And then this person went and bought a house with another agent, said, I didn't want to bother you.
Yeah.
Right?
I had that happen.
And it's like, and I'm sure there's a number of you out there that have had that. And it's because, well, I'm not going to get them to sign a rep agreement. But if you had, you would have gotten compensation for that.
Education's expensive.
It can be.
It can be very. I mean, full transparency, when I first started to sell, I did take clients out. I'd show them maybe 8 or 9 houses. It wasn't that bad. But they had no intentions of buying from me. They actually went back to an agent that they had intended the whole time. My problem was I was excited about having something to do and working with people, so I didn't ask the real questions that I needed to ask. Now, fast forward to today, when I'm training and coaching with agents, I always tell them to ask these questions. You need to know nothing is worse than getting to the end, and then they make an offer conditional on finance, and there's no money there, or not enough money to get the deal done.
Oh, for sure.
You've embarrassed yourself. You've embarrassed your clients. You've put the other side at a lot of risk. There's a number of things that can go wrong. So what I always say is, not only get your buyer agency agreement signed, but also ask the question. Do you need to sell your house to buy this property? Is there anybody involved in this agreement that we should consider because of financing? All sorts of different things that you need to ask. And I know hope springs eternal. You don't really want to know it. You just kind of go and wing it, but not a really good business plan.
Yeah. And, we had an earlier episode where we had on a couple representatives from mortgage organizations. We had RBC, and we also had Mission 35. So James Buckland and Rebecca Baskin. And we were talking about creating that relationship with your mortgage professional. This I mean, these stories to me lend itself to having that relationship and asking your client, would it be okay if you connect me with your mortgage professional so that you can have those conversations so that when it comes down to negotiating time or, we got to up offers, et cetera, do we know how much money we have? What can we do with down, the deposit, the maximum amount they're pre-approved for? That's key. Now, I also think, a lot of times we just focus on the buy and sell here, but let's talk about leases because you can run around and show a lot of leases. And we know that you typically do a lot more work with leases for less money. And there's something that, you got credit checks, everything. You should have all these things set up before you even take somebody out on a lease, especially.
Well, I'm both, but I think what you're referring to is most buyers are in some sort of denial. So a lot of people don't understand that even if their credit cards aren't being used, if there's a $25,000 limit on it, the banks look at that as being available to spend. So a lot of people are misinformed, and that's why whenever one of our mortgage partners decide they want to have an event or a lunch and learn or something like that, you need to go because they can help you with all this. They can help you with the language of talking to your clients to educate them on what they need to do to be ready for when they go to the banks for that final push for approval.
Yep.
There's one thing about being approved, and there's another thing about being pre-qualified, and there's questions in between that come up. So you need to really partner. I totally agree with that. One thing that's come about for me now, working with high net worth people and listing, over $5 million properties, there are a lot of those sellers that won't let somebody in the front door without a credit letter from a bank or an institution that says, yeah, they have X amounts of money in their bank account. This is not about running buyers around these high net worth properties for a looky-loo and just see what's going on. They have to be qualified. And I think if we could take that mentality and drop it down a bit, even if you're looking at $1 million property, you want to make sure that people are qualified to buy $1 million property. Don't assume that because it's on for $1 million, we're going to negotiate it. We're going to get it for 800 and we can afford that. But, there's that goes on as well. So very, very important. You learn how to ask the pertinent questions. And more than that, know what questions to ask.
Yeah, and when it comes to leases, things like credit scores, getting those, getting the application together, having all of that stuff ready when you go to look, because as soon as they find something, I don't know what it's like in your area, but I know in our area there is currently the vacancy rates are low and it's tough to get in and it's a fight sometimes. So you need to have that stuff ready because you may have to act right away. And that means that you have all your ducks in a row and you're ready to go. The worst thing you can do as a realtor is take somebody around and not know if they're qualified enough. And now you just spend all this time. So think about this. If I went and spent, say, 2 to 3 hours a day with this one particular person, and how many days have I spent with them looking at homes and going, then you find out they're not qualified. And as you said, sometimes experience is expensive. But I'm thinking about all those hours, if you add up and you put that into working with somebody who wanted to buy or list a house, man, you would have been so much further off. Yeah. And I don't want to push people away from doing leases because they're a great avenue. These people do need to buy it. They'll probably want to buy at some point. They have a lot of friends they can refer. And the number of agents that turn away people who want to do leases, and then I know guys, people and agents that do take on leases and they're killing it. Oh, yeah. This one guy did like 40 to 50 leases his first year, and now he's making, over $250,000 a year. Just a couple years later, he's just killing it because he got all these referrals. These people decided to buy a house afterwards, and he helped so many people that he's doing exceptionally well.
I've had a couple of agents in my lifetime, particularly that that became the king and queen of leases. And when an agent would come and say, no, I don't want to do the lease, okay, I know these people that love to do leases, and they built their whole career on it. But what they did was they learned to do it well. Yes. And I think that one of the things everybody should know, wherever your district is, whatever is an acceptable credit score or a good credit score, I think those are the kind of conversations you need with these people off the hop, right out the bat. Can you show me your credit score? You can run your own credit score through Equifax and TransUnion if you want. So find out what that is. If there's something on there, and Lord knows there's always a skeleton somewhere in a closet, especially with a divorce or other different things. That's one way to address the problem ahead of time. And you might have to say to the client, look, let's just wait a couple of months. Let's clean up this credit score, because when we go out, we know that as a scarcity of units available, you've got to have a 700, high 700, early 800 score in our area to qualify. And the landlords, particularly now, are going to want to have the best records available. So you can find out in the beginning, and this really helps you build trust and credibility with the people you're taking out. They're going, well, okay, we're not rushing into this. We're doing this properly. He's helping me with my credit score, or she's helping me with my credit score. We're going to work closely on this to get this done. But that same kind of effort needs to be put into all things. And unfortunately, the only way to, well, there's a couple ways to find out, but when you're working with a buyer, you're going to have to ask them. You're going to have to ask where they sit and what they really are pre-approved for. If you can get them in with one of our specialists, that helps you a lot, because they'll tell you kind of in the background. They won't tell you the amount, but they'll say, yes, you're in the right ballpark, or no, you're out to lunch, right? And on the same side, when you're listing something, geez, you got to be sure that that seller has enough money to close the deal. And that's a big area that agents just completely forget about.
Yeah, and just before we move into sellers, I just want to finish off with the buyers here. And it is important that I think the buyer's rep agreement is something that totally, a lot of people pass on it. And it's very interesting because, I've talked to realtors who go, I do not show a house until it's signed. I have other people say, no, I don't feel comfortable asking. And I get that. I mean, you got to show value. And if you are not meeting with them prior to taking them out, then how do you have a chance to show value? And so it really is going to depend on, and I'm not saying, look, there's a right way or wrong way. Is there a better way? Yes, but I think I have to look at it and say there are different personalities at work as realtors, as sales agents, right? We know this.
Yep.
And there are those who are not going to feel comfortable asking for it up front. And what I would say to them is, okay, then what if you went out and showed a few houses, then you go and sit down, and then, you've shown some value, you've shown your expertise. Now I can talk about it, but not bringing it up at all because you're afraid you're going to lose something. And yes, some people are going to say no initially, but that's an objection. And you're a sales professional, right. You need to learn to overcome those objections, but you don't work on them. So you get to the point where you never ask. But what I'm telling you is that for all of you out there, somebody saying no to signing a buyer's rep agreement is simply an objection. And as a sales professional, it's your job to learn how to overcome that.
Yeah.
And show your value. And I'm currently doing a class where we talked about what's your value proposition, and the fact that when I go and ask, a handful of people, and they can't even,
But they don't believe in themselves, so how are they going to convey it?
Well, yeah, or they don't think about it.
Well,
and
they think
you and
about
I know
it.
that a lot of them have value. They just don't know. They never thought of expressing it, and they never work on it.
Until they're sitting in front of me and they're in tears because they just lost all the commission, and they want me to go fight for them in arbitration, which I've done many, many, many times. And I'm 99 times I'm very successful, provided that the agent has helped me out here by having a buyer representation agreement. I can't help you if you don't have it. I can do nothing for you if you don't have it. But if you have it and somebody buys a house and usurps your services, we can go after that and get that money. Well, I don't want to upset the people. I don't want to make them mad at me. Are you kidding? That's what that buyer representation agreement was put in. It was put in to protect you, the realtor, from people who are dishonest or misrepresent their position. That's why it was there, folks. And I'm thinking this goes back almost probably 10 years at least. And in the beginning, I used to get oh, Lynn, they're my family. I can't ask them that question. And they'd be back crying. Grown men crying, sitting in front of me.
They're the worst.
Grown men sitting in front crying because their family had done them out of this deal. And that's the part that's wrong. So, if they don't have any bad intent, if they're not lying to you about having signed another buyer agreement, then ask them to sign it, because that's how you protect them. That's how they're protected. That agreement is to protect them as well as it is to protect you. And you better get the language to use it and have that agreement in place, and be sure that you want to do something. I've had lots of agents fill it out with zero in the compensation. Well, what am I supposed to do with that?
Yeah.
How am I going to fight for you if you put zero in there? It should be something at least, but not zero. So, these things were built to help you and your business and to protect you and your family from all the hard work you do and not getting paid.
Yeah, and by bringing it up, you do have that discussion. And I will say this, I've always said there's this saying in real estate that buyers are liars, and I go, no, they're not liars. They just don't know what they want.
That's right.
When it comes to, but here's the other thing is a lot of people don't know how real estate really works. Mm-hmm. And to be honest, it blows my mind sometimes that they don't, but because we've been in the industry for so long, we know this stuff. But I'm going to tell you right now, there are people out there that think you get paid a salary from the brokerages. They think you work for the brokerage, that you are going to get paid by them, and they know, yes, there's a commission, but they think there's something in the background, so you're not going to get hurt if they buy with somebody else. But that's, they do these things because you never had that discussion with them, because you never brought up the rep agreement because you were afraid to. And so, look, I know it's a little hard hitting hearing this for some of you, but you need to start having those discussions. And, yes, you may flounder at the beginning, but this is where practice comes in. You should be practicing this. Find a friend, practice these things. Shadow somebody who does it really well and see how they handle it. And it really comes down to confidence and believing in yourself. As you said, Lynn, you need to believe in yourself. You need to know you have value. I believe every single one of our agents out there do have value. Okay? You may not be the strongest salespeople, okay, but you have a lot of value and heart that you bring to, that you're going to truly take care of your client. But you are doing yourself and your client a disservice if you don't have those discussions, and you got to have them. Yeah. Plain and simple.
Or you make a business decision. It's very simple. You can make the decision that this is not the buyer that you want to work with. If they will not understand your rules and your policies around your business, which it's your business, then you simply don't work with them. Or there's another way I've suggested to agents once in a while, and it kind of alluded to what you were talking about. Let's say you just meet somebody for the first time. You don't know whether you like them. They don't know whether they like you. So you can say to them, this is how I run my business. I will meet you and show you 2 or 3 properties, maybe 2.
Yeah.
And we'll see how we get along. If we don't get along, I will be releasing you to the market. If we get along, then you're going to sign this agreement with me that we have this exclusivity that protects you as my client in law if that had to happen. Yep. So, you can give them a little bit of time to date, but you still need the conversation at the front end so you know. And then with those conversations, now everybody knows. My lawyer, she's known me for like 10 years. And every time I see her, I still have to give her a credit card and my photo ID. So everybody's used to that now. There should be none of this, I'm not giving you that. If they won't give you that, there's some red flags coming up here. Everybody is used to that. Get that information.
And I think a lot of times why people don't want to do the buyer rep is they've been burnt by other agents in the past who do the minimum or less than minimum, right? And so this is your chance to shine. I think this is the chance for people to shine. And, I like what you were saying, because I remember a few agents. This one agent I remember talking to years ago, she would do she would take them out and say 3 to 4. We're going to go out and show 3 to 4 homes. And then we're going to decide whether there's a fit moving forward.
Right.
And I share with people, I studied the Sandler sales system.
Yep.
And it was always about, I go into that first meeting was, at the end of the meeting, we're going to decide yes or no. We
Yeah.
both had that chance to say yes or no. So she said, like, you have a chance whether I'm a good fit for you, and I get to choose whether you're a good client for me, a good fit. And they're like, what? You get to say no to us?
You can fire me?
Yes.
Yeah.
And she said, I've never seen people work so hard to really become a good client. So, you know, there's a human psychology there that people want to belong. They want to know that they belong. And so when they think they have all the power and they go, oh, you have the power too? No, I want to, like, nobody else wanted to, you're willing to take me out without signing the agreement. There was other people that made me and I didn't want to, but now I want to work hard to become a good client for you. It's an interesting psychological effect in the brain that happens for a lot of people. So, I mean, if you're one of those people who still will not have that conversation up front, then try that method, is going in and saying, look, we're going to look at 3, 4 homes, and then we'll sit together and we'll decide whether there's a fit. We both get to say yes or no.
And there's a lot of questions in that yes or no.
Oh, for sure.
But one of the, just to go back to the walking away, the best negotiating skill in the world is the ability for you to walk away. When you can walk away and when you can say to your client, if you've got a client on the other side, say, look, if this doesn't go the way we want it tonight, I am going to walk away. I need you to be prepared to walk away with me. We're going to walk away from this, and we're going to see how they change their tone when we walk away. And then have your client prepared to go on and do next steps and great things for them to do. But in this conversation with the buyer rep, you know, along with the FinTrack and the identification and all the questions, this is also where you need to have that monetary question. We're going to go out and look at houses today. What can you afford? What price snap bracket are we in? Have you been pre-qualified? Have you been pre-approved?
What is your mortgage professional? Have they given you a letter?
Right.
Stating,
what have we got? Where are we going to find anything when we get to you see the house that you want and we want to make an offer on it? Are we good to know that when we present that to the bank or the lender of your choice, that you will be able to buy that property without any hiccups? And year before, that was really important because things were flying off the shelf so fast that you didn't even have that time. Now you have a little bit more time, and you should. And I've always believed you should do these things anyway. So it's a good practice to get in. Those are the kinds of questions you need to know, and practice the skills. Practice the questions.
For sure. Practice, practice, practice. The last thing I'm going to leave you on with the buyers is, you know, there's nothing worse than taking somebody out to show them whether it's a rental or a purchase that they can't afford. So they've looked at all these homes, say $1 million homes, and to find out they can only afford $600,000. It takes the air right out of them. They're like, nothing satisfies them now because they've seen all these homes that they can't afford, and then they say, forget it, we're out. And
we're out of the market. We're out of
they're completely out of the market.
Exactly.
Completely out.
And that's a big loss too, because now you've disappointed them so massively, they don't even want to do anything.
Yeah.
So you really shot yourself in the foot.
Yeah, you did all that work and now they're just...
they're gone.
You had somebody, you know, even in the next 30, 60 days, now we're talking years. So let's talk about sellers. This is share a story with you. I told you briefly before we started filming, but I didn't tell the whole story. So I was working for the real estate lawyer. You know, a lot of services we offered, and I go to this small town and I meet this, there was somebody at the brokerage that used our services. I meet the manager and I'm saying, blah, 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 here's what things we do. Oh, would you love to come and talk to our agents? Sure, no problem. And I talked about doing some of the searches. And so what was interesting was I said, you know, how many of you do these searches? Nobody. I said, so basically what you're telling me is that you're taking your client's word that this is what they owe, et cetera. And they go, yes. I said, and the manager's jaw's just dropping lower and lower every time I'm asking these questions. I said, so do you think that if your clients had 3 credit cards maxed, had a line of credit worth $300,000 full there. They owed a couple $100,000 to the government in back taxes. Do you think they're going to let you know that? No, they're not. I said, so then why are you trusting them? And it was just eye-opening for them that they just took the client's word and never checked. And then I remember deals where they go, somebody looked and said, oh my God, there's 2 mortgages on there. And so they get somebody else to say, oh, no, you could negotiate those. Yeah, there'll be money. And this was not the lawyer working on the deal. What they didn't take into account is that the second mortgage was held by a real estate agent who helped the client buy the house in the first place. He was also a mortgage professional, so he held the second mortgage. And when his client decided to go with a competitor of his from the same brokerage, and he was pissed off, to say the least.
Yeah.
And he's like, no, he wasn't budging. And when it came to close time, there was no money to pay. And they were upset at the lawyer because, well, he got paid, but you didn't make sure that there was enough money.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So these things, there are a lot of things that when it comes to listing, there's a lot of questions we got to ask in terms of title, in terms of liens and mortgages, rent to own versus rental items, right?
Yeah.
There's a lot of things that agents sometimes forget to ask.
Yeah. So for my guys, I've been saying this for quite some time now. Everybody should go into our Geo warehouse and pull the parcel abstract. That's going to show you how much money is owed. I had one recently where they owed every penny of what the listing price was. There was no money left. No money for the listing agent, no money for the cooperating agent. Now, if we're holding the trust money, if we're holding it and you have shorted a cooperating agent, that money is going to go to the cooperating agent first. That's where that's going to go. So you are going to be in trouble. And I've had more listings not be able to close because of the seller side recently than the other way around. So you've got to make sure. The other thing that lovely document tells you is how the property is held. Is it joint tenancy or tenants in common? That can make a huge difference as well.
And just for those that are brand new, I know they should all know this, but explain the difference.
So it's confusing because I never found the language being understandable. The best way to think of it is joint tenancy means there's a survivorship. So if a husband dies, a wife dies, then the property is automatically survivorship to the other party. Tenants in common means Eric and I are living together. We don't trust each other maybe, but we each want to have our own money. So if I died, he's not getting any of that, and he dies, I'm not getting any of that. If we were married and it was joint tenancy, which I'm sure your arrangement is, with your significant other, then it transfers. And this is what people don't understand. If it's tenants in common and someone dies, then it's going to be an estate. Then it's got to be probated. Then there's all these other things that have to go on. If you find that and you're in question, you can speak to one of our legal advisors. You can take it to your own legal advisor. But when you find out this information on the parcel abstract, you should be, if you don't understand what it means, you can't read it, bring it to one of your managers, bring it to one of us, and we'll help you understand it. If it takes more clarification than that, we'll go to one of the legal people and ask them and help you with that. But you need to know. I
think one of the things that would trigger, obviously, is common law relationships, because there are different, when you look at common law, there's one thing for child support, there's another thing for real estate, right?
So you can't have
3
joint
years or
tenancy.
1 year with a child, and but typically a lot of those are not going to be joint.
They can't be. So I've come to understand that in the real sense that if it's a common law, it's not recognized under the Canadian real estate laws. So it can't be.
Exactly.
You could be with them 30 years. It's not going to make a difference.
I used to say to people, you're either married or you're not. You're married or you're not.
And if you're not, and if you choose not to, but you trust somebody and you want to make sure they get it, then you have a will to make sure that that's in place. But don't die without a will. Don't die without a will if you're tenants in common, because you might have just mucked up your family.
But that is a key indicator for you to especially when it's common law, you want to pull that search and just verify what the ownership is like, because it's possible that the one partner is not on title at all, okay? Or they are on title, but it's tenants in common. Okay, so you do want to double check that to make sure who's on title and clarify that, because to be honest, a lot of people don't understand, they don't know, and it's easy for you to assume. And so people have gotten in trouble. It can cause problems when it comes time to closing. So you want to avoid these type of things. That's number one, is checking that. But the all the stuff that's owed, like that's crazy. The fact that somebody owed everything.
Oh yeah, the whole amount. The whole amount.
Is,
and then
wow.
the mortgage person that was holding the mortgages on this property, they went direct to the buyers, and sold it for the exact amount that was being held. Totally and completely usurped both the listing and the cooperating agent. Gone. No money. None. Not. So one of the things, though, to go back to what you're saying is, I mean, even if you know a couple and you think you know them well, not every woman takes her husband's last name. So you can have two last names. It does not necessarily mean they're not married. It just means they have two different names. But ask the question, what's your legal status? Are you married? Are you common law?
Yeah.
Ask the question. It's the only way you're going to find out the answer. And I don't understand why they're just questions, and they're part of your job to ask. And they would save you and the people that you're with, that you're trying to help, so much trouble in the long run, for the sake of a very quick question. Like, just, can you tell me what your legal status is? Are you guys common law, or are you married? And as I said, with so many, especially in real estate, so many women continue with their maiden name or a first name and not take their husband's name. You don't know. It's not a problem to ask the question.
And there's a growing trend for people not to get married, that they just live together.
Yeah, and they don't understand.
With different divorces, et cetera. So this is where, for me, it's your systems. What systems do you have in place for intaking information? And for me, that's the intake form. The number of agents that I talk to that don't have an intake form, they just go, everything's up here. And you guys will hear me say repeatedly, and sometimes I feel like a broken record, but when you keep everything up here, you're at the mercy of your emotions and your energy. And if I'm low energy, low emotion that day, I'm going to forget things, and I'm going to forget to ask certain questions. So having a sheet in front of you that you can go click, click, yep, check. I've checked it off. I asked the question. It's there. And here's the thing, is that some people think, oh man, people are going to be upset that I asked the question. But if I have a form, like if it's just me asking, okay, I get where they might feel that way. But if I have a form, I'm just asking all the questions on this form. And so now it's not a big deal. So it really, having that intake form, if you don't have one, I encourage you to build one. Okay? There are questions you got to ask. And let's get into some of those, because the other thing I've seen cause so many issues is these rent to own and rentals, right? Where somebody, and to be honest, there's a lot of people are not going to know, right? They sign some agreement. All they know is so much money comes out of their bank account each month. There's my water heater, there's my furnace, my air conditioner, and sometimes there was point in the, back a few years, Reliance was a company that had.
Oh, they still do.
Yes, I know.
Still do.
But I'm trying to be nice to Reliance here, but no. But there was a number of companies that would flag, should cause a red flag to go up and say, whoa, I need to ask some questions here. And so now a rent to own, versus a rental contract, while some of them can be assumed, some can't.
That's right.
Right? Some of them, the buyers don't want to take that on. And so that means the seller has to buy it out.
Right.
And those come at a, like,
do they have the money to buy it out?
Oh.
I know. Some of them are a lot.
What's interesting to me is that people go, well, it's in a house. But I know companies, when I was selling office equipment and photocopiers, printers, et cetera, I remember we had this one, we went after this one client, And this was like a $12,000 to $15,000 machine that when we did the math and said they had been flipped so many times by the competitor that to buy it out, they would have had to pay out $70,000 to buy out a $12,000 machine because all they looked at was the monthly payment and that's all they cared about. They didn't look to see that they're way overpaying for something that they didn't need to. And that opened my eyes to say, wow, now I understand when I hear it in real estate, like people just sometimes look at that monthly cost and go, they have no clue, right?
And that's where, as a listing agent on your checklist, you should have all the things that are rented and all the things and get the client. One of the ways you can show a client you're already working with them is to ask them for the contracts.
Yes.
Ask them to show you any contracts that they might have anywhere. And the other thing, just to jump back for a quick second, the other thing on the checklist should be, what's your citizenship status? Are you a citizen?
Yes.
Are you a permanent resident? Are you here on a visa? There's all these different things as well that we need to know about. And again, they're the things that fall through the cracks unless you have them written down on a piece of paper. And you may actually legit know the answer to it and may not need to ask it, but if it's not on the piece of paper, you're probably not going to ask it whether you need to or not. So I do agree. Again, it all comes down to systems and asking the right questions.
Yeah, and I remember working with a brokerage where with the lawyer, we were looking at all their different clauses. And one of the things, it was interesting, I remember a case where with the rent to owns is the potential buyer was trying to ask the question, could they assume, and they want to know some stuff. And the company was like, sorry, because of privacy, we can't give that. It has to come from the seller.
Right.
So if you are the listing agent, I'm going to tell you right now, you should be getting those forms from your client and have that information and have a look at the contract to make sure, because here's what comes down to is it's possible that, when the market's going crazy, things sometimes people waive and that goes through, but during a regular period, you'll have people that go, sorry, you thought you had a deal, and they go, we can't find out that information. And there are some people that, even though it'll be minimal, they'll just say, no, I'm walking away. And so if you had that information, you could have looked at the contract to see if it's assumable or what the payout is. Find out that information. Being transparent helps, that transaction to take place.
Yeah, don't assume that they own all the mechanics. That's basically what you're saying. Don't assume they own the mechanics, the solar systems, the roof panels,
solar systems.
That's just another whole can of worms we're going to talk about.
We could have a whole episode.
We could have a whole episode on this, but there's all those things that we all take for granted that we think they're owned by the homeowner. They aren't necessarily. And even the homeowner, to Eric's point, will have forgotten about it. They'll just, it's a monthly piece that comes off my, I don't know what it is. I've forgotten all about it. So very important that you go through the whole laundry list of all those things. And it's for their protection. You're asking the questions, really, for their protection. The same goes with, and this is so basic, folks, washer, dryers, fridges, stoves, all those things. Make sure that what the person sees in the house during the showing, it's clear and understood, whether it stays or whether it goes, whatever it is, because we end up, probably a lot of you have paid for a washer dryer or a dishwasher in your lifetime. It's one of those expensive things that you do, cost of doing business sometimes. But if you do it right the first time and you get it right at the beginning, then there won't be a problem. So again, on the checklist, find out what's staying, what's going, take pictures of it, document it. Don't let them swap something out at the end. Well, you said fridge, but you got a cafe white, but now you got like this Kenmore over here. No, different thing, right?
I was just going to bring that up, is that there's nothing wrong with you taking pictures and making note in the contract that you take a picture of that, where the model number is, and you say fridge model number this, serial number this.
Yep.
And so you specify that in the contract so they can't swap it out.
Yeah.
Right? Because it's one thing to say, yes, washer and dryer, there'll be a washer and dryer there. And I sold a lot of things in my career, and I sold appliances. And I used to have people coming in, they bought the cheapest washer and dryer that had no features. They needed it to put it into this house. Now,
Yeah.
majority of the time is for rentals, but
It's supposed to be
sometimes-
comparable. Should be
Sometimes
comparable.
it was just they
Yeah.
needed a washer and dryer in there. So
Yeah.
make note of model numbers, serial numbers. Do not be afraid to put that into the contract so that it's documented that we are expecting this machine to be there.
Yeah.
Unless it breaks
Yeah.
beforehand, it has to be replaced, then there's got to be a conversation.
Yeah. My
Right?
furnace broke down on day of closing.
Wow.
Broke down on day of closing. I was lucky. I was doing the deal with another agent. He was buying it for himself and his wife, and so it all worked out good. I called him up and I said, "Hey, I can get it repaired by tomorrow for $2,000, or I can split the difference with you, and you can go buy yourself the one you want, and I'll give you money toward that." And that's what we did. But that was lucky. Not everybody is that reasonable on
Yes.
the other end. I think the funniest one I ever had was I wanted my clients to take down this lovely light fixture prior to the pictures being taken. Well, didn't quite happen. Pictures got done a little bit sooner. So the light was gone before any showings transpired. But the light was in the picture, okay? I had to go to court. I had to fight over it. I had to go to an arbitration over it. But the funny part was the buyers claimed that they sat on the bed and felt the breeze from this light and fan, which was not there. It wasn't there, but they sat on the bed and felt that. But they were wrong, and I had proof because of my timing. But never again. Disclosures in your paperwork. Certain things in these pictures may or may not be in here at time, but we had excluded it. So, well, no, I don't think I had excluded it because I didn't need to exclude it because it wasn't there,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, you
So
wouldn't have.
you got to be really, really careful with some of this stuff and ask all the questions. So get that
Yeah.
checklist ready.
It's very important that you do, there's the saying, cover your ass, CYA.
Yeah, that's it.
You know what? You can avoid a lot of problems if you just do your due diligence and do all the little steps. Yes, I get it. For some of you go, it's just Eric, it's a little bit, it's this extra work. But you know what? That one time when you don't do it and it costs you, it is painful. And trust me, you don't want to go through that. So take the time, just develop the system, the checklist, go through everything. If you're representing the buyer, then do your due diligence, take the photos, make note of everything that's in there. As Lynn said, what's included, what's excluded. Be very careful when the agreement's going back and forth.
Yeah.
I've seen people where there was a clause in there and it comes back and it gets struck out and the person didn't notice.
Yeah.
So you got to go through everything. You got to know all the clauses that are in there, and you go through that and say what was struck out, what do we need to, maybe we come back and say, no, this is gonna, you got to negotiate that. Get for your buyers, just wrapping up here, but buyers, get the buyer rep, get the pre-approval and pre-qualification letter from the mortgage professionals, get the credit scores and the applications and everything, references, et cetera, from your leases, right, for the renters. This is all about the little things that can be easily overlooked, that a lot of you just, you're in a hurry to get the money. And I think, to me, Lynn, I've been saying recently, I think a lot of people, you have a tough year, you become a little bit desperate, and I joke, but I go, it's that new fragrance, Ode to Desperation, that people are wearing that feeds off that they are interested in just the money. And when you forget about the sale or the purchase and forget about focus on the person and how do I serve them best, then I start doing the things that I need to do in order to take care of them. And if I need to walk away, I walk away. But
Right. And to do that, you need more leads, and that's another episode.
yeah. Okay, so thank you so much for joining us this week. We hope we gave you a lot of insight, some good advice. I hope all of you get out there, and if you don't have one, create an intake form. Create those systems around those things that you need to do to work with these different types of clients, whether it's a buyer, a seller, or a leaser. Thank you for joining us, Lynn. As always, it's been amazing. Great. We'll see you guys next week on the Business Real Estate Podcast with Eric Johnson and Lynn Hoffman.